What's going on, everybody out there in YouTube land? How's everybody doing? There are some folks out there that say the law or the Torah of Yahweh is a burden or a curse. To that, I have to highly disagree. It's a blessing. Everybody that keeps the Torah understands better the spirit of the law better than those who do not. They understand that it's not just a big list of do's and don'ts. It's a blueprint of how we should live our lives. The Creator gave us the Torah because He loves and cares for us. That's why it says in Exodus 34:6, and Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, and ever compassionate and showing favor, patient and great in kindness and truth. Yahweh loves and cares for His people. That's why He gave us Shabbat. We need a day of rest because of all the stress in our lives. Stress will kill you if it gets out of control. That's also why He gave us commandments on the animals we should and should not eat. Some because they're unhealthy to eat. And another fact is some animals He don't even consider food. Pig is not food. Shrimp is not food. Crabs, not food. Yahweh also gave us the feast days to observe because He loves and cares for us. I'm going to read pretty much all of Leviticus 23, which outlines all the feast days, and the first one being Shabbat. Verse 1. Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, The appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a set apart gathering. You do no work, it is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, set apart gatherings which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings is the Passover to Yahweh. And on the 15th day of this month is the festival of unleavened bread to Yahweh. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. On the first day you have a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. You shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. On the 7th day is a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, we should always pay attention when those words appear in the Torah. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, or Yahweh said, Speak to the children, verse 10, Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves it. And on that day, when you have waved the wheat sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as a burnt offering to Yahweh. And its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahweh, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread and roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Elohim. A law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 completed Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days, then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour they are, baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahweh. And besides the bread you shall bring 7 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull, and 2 rams. They are a burnt offering to Yahweh, with their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire for a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. You shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs, a year old, as a peace offering. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahweh, besides the 2 lambs that are set apart to Yahweh for the priest. And on this same day you shall proclaim a set apart gathering for yourselves. You do not serve our work on it, a law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month on the 1st day of the month, you have a rest, a remembrance of blowing of trumpets, a set apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, on the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a set apart gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And you do no work on that same day, for it is the Day of Atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does not work on that same day, who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It is a Sabbath of rest to you. You shall afflict your beings on the 9th day of the month, the evening. From evening to evening you observe the Sabbath, your Sabbath. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th month is the festival of booths for 7 days to Yahweh. On the 1st day it is a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day there shall be a set apart gathering for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is a closing festival. You do no servile work. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, which you proclaim as set apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, a burnt offering and a grain offering, a slaughtering and drink offerings, as commanded for every day. Besides the Sabbaths of Yahweh, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahweh. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the fruit of the land, observe the festival of Yahweh for 7 days. On the 1st day is a rest, and on the 8th day a rest. You shall take for yourselves on the 1st day the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall observe it as a festival to Yahweh for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generations. Observe it in the 7th month. Dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I have made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel. Shoo! Hope I didn't lose anyone after that long reading, but that sums up the feast days. And you see a reoccurring theme. Yahweh wants us to pay close attention, pay a lot of attention to Israel coming out of Mitzrayim, and Yahweh delivering them out of Mitzrayim. If you notice how that he keeps repeating himself, as I brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, Yahweh wants us to pay close attention to that. Next scripture is Zechariah 14:16 through 19. And it shall be that all who are left from all the Gentiles which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign Yahweh of hosts, and to observe the festival of booths. And it shall be that if anyone of the clans of the earth does not come up to Jerusalem to bow himself to the sovereign Yahweh of hosts, on them there is to be no rain. And if the clan of Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain. On them is the plague with which Yahweh plagues the Gentiles, that's nations in Hebrew, or Goy, who do not come up to observe the festival of booths. This is the punishment of Mitzrayim, and the punishment of all the Gentiles that do not come up to observe the festival of booths. Pretty obvious this is a future time. So if we're not observing the festival of tabernacles, then it looks like we will have no rain and be plagued at that time. I would say the Torah is a curse in this example. Only reason it's a curse is if you do not obey the command to observe the festival of tabernacles. It is safe to say we better start observing the Feast of Tabernacles now, so we won't be plagued and have any rain whenever this prophecy of Zechariah comes to pass. Of course, we should observe all the feasts, not just Feast of Tabernacles. We would do well to follow the Messiah's example. So did he keep the commanded feast in Leviticus 23? If he did not, he would be a sinner. John 7, 2 through 14. And the festival of the Yehudim was near, the festival of booths. So his brothers said to him, Get away from here and go into Yehuda, so that your taught ones also see the works that you are doing. For no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these works, show yourself to the world. For even his brothers did not believe in him. Yeshua therefore said to them, My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. It is impossible for the world to hate you, but it hates me because I bear witness of it, that its works are wicked. You go up to this festival. I am not yet going up to this festival, for my time has not yet been filled. And having said to them, he said in Galilee, but when his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but as it were in secret. The Yehudim therefore were seeking him at the festival and said, Where is he? And there was much grumbling about him among the crowd. Some were saying, He is good, but others were saying, No, but he is leading the crowd astray. However, no one spoke openly of him for the fear of the Yehudim. And about the middle of the festival, Yeshua went up into the set-apart place, and he was teaching. This is a great example of the Messiah keeping the festival of tabernacles. Let's look at him keeping the festival of Passover. Luke 2:41. And his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the festival of the Passover. The Messiah kept the Passover every year of his life. He was raised in Torah observance, obviously because he was a Jew. He was Jewish. Luke 22:1. And the festival of unleavened bread drew near, which is called Passover. Skip down to verse 7. And the day of unleavened bread came when the Passover had to be slaughtered. These are very interesting verses. The phrase unleavened bread and Passover were used interchangeably during this time. These verses sometimes cause confusion because of that. We know from the Torah that the Passover was killed on the day of Passover. So whenever you're reading these verses, or similar verses in the New Testament, remember that unleavened bread and Passover were used interchangeably at the time this was wrote. Luke 22, verse 8 through 16. And he sent Kepha and Yochanan, saying, Go and prepare the Passover for us to eat. And they said to him, Where do you wish for us to prepare? And he said to them, See, as you enter into the city, a man shall meet you carrying a jar of water. Follow him into the house he enters. And you shall say to the master of the house, The teacher says to you, Where is the guest room, where I might eat the Passover with my taught ones? And he shall show you a large furnished upper room. Prepare it there. And going, they found it as he had said to them, and they prepared the Passover. And when the hour had come, he sat down, and the 12 emissaries with him. And he said to them, With desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before my suffering. For I say to you, I shall certainly not eat of it again until it is filled in the reign of Elohim. Verse 16 is proof that the Passover is not done away with by Messiah's words. I will do a later video just on the Passover alone, because that's a very important topic. Acts 2, 1 through 4. And when the day of the festival of weeks had come, they were all with one mind in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from the heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them divided tongues, as of fire, and settled on each of them. And they were all filled with the set-apart Spirit, and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them to speak. Paul and the other apostles were observing the festival of weeks, aka the festival of Shavuot, or Pentecost. Paul also observed that in 1 Corinthians 16:8. And I shall remain in Ephesus until the festival of weeks. Acts 20, verse 6. And we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and came to them at Troas in 5 days, where we stayed 7 days. Here's another example of a believer in the New Testament observing the festival of unleavened bread. May we all walk in the blessings of the Torah and be blessed by our observance of Yahweh's feasts. Shalom.